Good morning, foxes. I hope you're all okay. I'm really sorry if you tried to watch the story yesterday and it wasn't there. I videoed it in the afternoon, posted it on YouTube, and then when I checked last night, it still hadn't uploaded at like 8 o'clock. So I deleted it and re-uploaded it, and it is on there now. So if you didn't manage to watch it yesterday, you are very lucky and you get a double dose today. Also, I noticed in the book, each chapter has a cute little picture at the top, and this tells us who the narrator is. So, when it's a fox, I'm assuming it's going to be Pax, and when it's the boy, I assume it will be Peter. So, we are reading chapter 5 today, which is a Pax chapter. This was my territory. Pax was so startled that he nearly toppled from the oak trunk he'd been drowsing on. All day he'd been keeping watch and seen nothing larger than a grasshopper, and now here was a bright-furred vixen. He had never seen another fox before, but he knew younger and smaller and a female, but definitely fox. Instinct told him also that the way she held her ears and tail erect meant she expected his submission. I hunt here. Pax felt an urge to run back to his crude nest and press himself into the remaining stalks as if retreating to his pen, but he resisted it. What if the boy came back and he wasn't here? He flattened his ears to show he meant no threat, but that he would not leave. The vixen paced over and Pax drew in her scent, as familiar as his own, but also exotic. She sniffed and bristled in a distrust at the human scent on him. Pax had been born with the same instinct as well, but distrust is no match for kindness administered consistently and unmeasured, especially in creatures new to the world. Pax had been only 16 days old when Peter had rescued him. A fatherless, motherless curl of charcoal fur, his eyes barely opened, and it wasn't long before he'd come to trust the quiet, gangly boy who'd brought him home. The vixen poked her pointed snout in to sniff him more closely and bristled again. The scent is my boy's. Have you seen him? Pax shared the most important features of his human, the naked round ears, the towering legs, so improbably long that Pax always feared he would topple over when he ran, the black curled hair that grew to different lengths, then became short again. No humans are here, but they are approaching. Just then, Bristle's head rose as if jerked on an unseen wire. Her ears pricked, trained on a slight rustling in the nearby tuft of broom sedge. Her rear began to twitch, gathering energy. She sprang high and then paused tight over her black nose. She dived into the grass with a wash of white-tipped tail. Pax sat up, alert. In a second, Bristle's head reappeared, and in her jaws was a wood rat. She leapt clear of the grass, bit through the rat's neck, and dropped it onto the ground. Orphaned before he'd been weaned, Pax had never eaten raw prey. His hunger rose at the blood scent, and so did his curiosity. He took a cautious step closer. Bristle growled, and Pax retreated to watch from a safe distance. He grew hungrier as she crunched bites. He thought of the brimming comfort of his kibble bowl, the pleasure of Peter's hand-fed treats, and the ultimate reward, peanut butter. He needed to find his boy. His boy would feed him. Before he could ask about the approaching humans, Bristle picked up what remained of the rat, a single hind leg with its long tail, and stalked off with it dangling from her jaw. Pax watched as she wove her way between the grass tufts, becoming only flashes of flame and white, leaving. He was swept by the memory of his human's car roaring away in its stinging spray of gravel. Just before she slipped into a fringe of ferns at the wood's edge, she paused and glanced at him over her shoulder. At that moment, a sharp snap from a fallen oak startled her. It was followed by a red streak of fur that hurtled from the dried foliage, flew over the weeds, and landed on her back. Pax flattened himself. He could hear the vixen's yips as she scuffed with her attacker, but they sounded more irritated than afraid. He poked his head up. Bristle pounced on a ball of fur and bit it hard. To Pax's surprise, a smaller, skinnier version of herself unfurled at her paws. Pax was stunned. Never had he suspected that foxes might soar like birds, whose swooping arcs were not like any movement he himself could achieve. The little fox flipped to his back and gave his belly in submission, but this seemed only to make Bristle angrier, her chattering now punctuated by jabs and nips. Pax bounded over, overcome by curiosity. The skinny fox startled with the unfamiliar human scent that looked over Bristle's shoulder. His eyes widened when he spied Pax, and he scrambled to his paws. "Friendly," he announced to Pax. "Brother, but not litter mate of the vixen. Play?" Bristle bared her teeth and snarled at her brother. "Dangerous. Stay away." Pax ignored Bristle's warning posture and met the greeting. "Friendly? You flew." "Bird?" The little fox bounded to the fallen oak, then sprang onto its trunk. One fork of the dead tree angled up. The small fox walked lightly along its length. He looked down to make sure Pax was watching. Pax dropped and tucked his paw under his chest, but it was hard to keep from leaping onto the tree to try it himself. He had climbed the walls of his pen, of course, but he'd never been higher than its 6 feet. His brush twitched. The vixen stalked a few steps away and then dropped to the ground. She rolled on her side to gaze directly up at her brother. Her love for him obvious now. He was the runt. He's small, but he's tough. I don't want him with me when I hunt, but he follows me. She tossed her head and growled at Pax, but as though blaming him for her brother's play. The runty little fox stepped out along the branch, tail poised for balance, and coiled himself and leapt out over the heads of the earthbound foxes. He landed in a clump of burdock beside the road and then burst out covered in burrs. He tore around in mad circles as if soaring had filled him with an excess of joy that had been spent through his legs, then flung himself onto the ground to roll out the rest. His sister pounced on him. "Too close to the road." While she pulled the burrs from his coat, she scolded him for the recklessness of his flight, but Pax marvelled at it. A good 5 full bounds he travelled without touching paws to ground. He would try the feat himself one day. When Runt managed to get his feet, he lowered his head and nuzzled his sister. She knocked him back to the ground, only mock rough this time, and then sat on him, pinning him down. He struggled a little, but never really tried to upset her, as he protested only meekly when she began to groom him. Pax settled himself in a respectful distance away. After a while, her brother, now properly subdued in her irritation, Bristle retrieved the morsel of rat and dropped it in front of him. She lay down and began to lick her paws, then to clean her face with them. Pax edged closer, so that now his belly brushed the ground. The company of these 2 young foxes drew him, whether he was welcomed or not. Bristle stretched out in a patch of slanting sunlight. Her damp cheeks glistened like a pumpkin-coloured wood of the table where Pax's humans ate their food, brilliant against the white of her sleek throat. Pax looked over at Runt, who was sniffing the spot where Pax had slept. His coat markings were identical, but not as vibrant. His fur was sparse and tufty in places, and his hip bones protruded at sharp angles. He reared back suddenly and pounced in mock attack. Pax watched as Runt tossed the toy soldier into the air and then pinned it down over and over. He had done the same thing as a kit. He trotted over and joined the game, and Runt welcomed him as though they had played together since birth. Bristle got to her feet. "Bring it here." Her brother ignored her for a moment, but then, as if he had been judging the limits of his sister's patience, he lopped over and dropped the toy at her paws. Bristle issued a throaty rattle at the soldier. "Human, leave it. Home, now," she ordered to her brother. Runt leaned into Pax and braced his forelegs. Bristle sprang back to nip her brother. "He stinks of humans, remember?" Pax was startled by the image she communicated to her brother, then a cold howling wind, a mated pair of foxes struggling with something that reminded Pax of his pen. Steel, but with jaws and clamps instead of bars. The steel jaws on the snowy ground were smeared with blood. Bristle tipped her head to assess the sky and sniffed the breeze, which carried the threat of thunderstorms from the south. "Home." Runt lowered his tail and began to follow his sister, but then he turned back to Pax, inviting him to come as well. Pax hesitated. He didn't want to leave the spot his human would return to, but dark clouds were rolling in, and just then thunder boomed in the distance. He knew his boy would not venture out during a storm. He didn't want to think of getting drenched by the side of the road, alone. He tucked the toy soldier into his cheek and set out after the other 2 foxes. Bristle turned when she sensed his presence. "One night only, human stinker." Pax agreed. He would follow his scent back to the road after the storm. His humans would come for him then. And once he found his boy, he would never leave his side. Okay, we're going to stop there. Chapter 6, which we'll read tomorrow, is a Peter chapter, and I hope he doesn't get into too much trouble in that storm that is on its way. Okay, so stay safe, guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.